Episode 8 of Pluribus is arriving next week, and there are multiple questions surrounding what will happen in the final 2 episodes of Season 1. How will Manousos react to the hive rescuing him, even though he probably didn't want to be rescued? Will he meet Carol by the end of Season 1, and what will take place between them? Is Carol now on the side of the others, and is she playing a smarter game to disrupt them? And does the big theory going around that Zosia might be pregnant have any weight going for it? There are of course a few things to get into, and it definitely keeps things interesting as we approach the end of Season 1. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing my predictions and theories for Pluribus Episode 8. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more on Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating and subscribing to the channel. But without further ado, let's dive into my latest predictions and theories for Pluribus. So after the end of Pluribus Episode 7, many of us were left with some big talking points going into next week's episode. Carol and Manousos are both driven to very different breaking points, as with Carol there's the unbearable weight of solitude, and then with Manousos there's the limits of stubborn independence. So the stage is set for their eventual meeting and the fallout of both their compromises as the series moves towards its final episodes. The title of episode 8 is Charm Offensive, and I think this title could be directed at both Carol in the way she spends time with Zosia, and also how the hive tries to reason with Manousos. For those who don't know, a charm offensive is a phrase used to describe a deliberate, coordinated effort to win people over through friendliness, persuasion, or apparent goodwill, especially after distrust, conflict, or resistance already exists. The key idea is that the charm is strategic rather than purely sincere, as compliments, openness, generosity, or emotional vulnerability are deployed to soften opposition and reshape perception. It's often used in politics or corporate behaviour, but it also applies on a personal level when someone who has previously been threatening, distant, or controlling suddenly presents themselves as benevolent in order to regain influence. What makes a charm offensive unsettling is all the ambiguity surrounding it, as while it may involve genuine connection, it may just as easily mark manipulation, making the recipient unsure whether they are being respected or quietly manoeuvred. So in that sense, the title of the next episode isn't contradicting the show's darker themes or grey areas. It could be suggesting that the most effective way to erase individuality is through empathy that arrives precisely when someone is at their weakest. Now, I'm of course directing this towards Carol, but that's just one of many ways that the next episode might frame that title. It might actually frame it from the other side of things, with Carol charming the hive. And it might also be related to the way Manousos is treated as he recovers from his supposed infection. The description for episode 8 on Apple TV reads, Carol takes a different tack with the others and discovers more than she anticipated, and Manousos awakens in unfamiliar surroundings. So starting with Manousos, we are obviously going to learn what happened to him after the end of episode 7, and we'd think that it would likely skip a good few days, as the show did with Carol, so that he can recover from his injuries. In episode 7, Manousos stubbornly tries to reach Carol on his own, refusing any help from the others because he wants to stay independent. He pushes himself through extreme conditions, including crossing the dangerous Darien Gap, and rejects food, water, and transportation offered to him by the others. During the journey, he is badly injured after falling onto sharp palm spines, and despite attempting to treat himself, his wounds become infected and he collapses from exhaustion. In the end, he survives only because the others step in and rescue him. Now, based on the description for episode 8, Manousos is clearly waking up in the next episode, but we don't know what exactly that means for him and whether he will see Carol. I think that meeting will likely happen in the finale of season 1, as they've been building up to that ever since we were introduced to his character. I think our time with Manousos in the next episode is actually going to be quite short, as I think most of it will focus on Carol and Zosia. But what I do think will happen in reference to the episode's title is that the Hive will make a big charm offensive play with him while he recovers in a hospital in Albuquerque. A likely charm offensive strategy by the others against Manousos would probably focus less on pressure and more on empathy, meeting him on the moral ground which he believes he occupies. Rather than trying to convince him that joining is inevitable, they could reiterate what Carol knows about them using their stem cells and that it's ultimately his decision. They might think that in doing this that it will make him happier, just like we saw with Carol. And they could emphasise that they intervened in his journey towards Carol as an act of care. Now, knowing Manousos, I don't think he is going to be won over by this at all. I think Manousos will continue to reject everything that they throw at him, and I think by the end of the episode, he will leave the hospital to go find Carol. And I think this move will set up a clash of ideologies between Carol and Manousos come the season finale. And what do I mean by a clash of ideologies? Well, in moving over to Carol now, while I think it's likely that she may be playing a bigger game of charm offensive herself, I'm unsure whether that will stick, as there is currently a big theory surrounding her and Zosia that viewers think is going to be revealed by the end of episode 8, and I'll come on to that theory soon. But for most of episode 8, I think Carol is going to play a smarter game to make the Hive think she is more accepting now. Based on the image release for the episode, it looks like Carol is going to be spending time with Zosia, playing some croquet with her. Because of the title, I think it will frame the episode to make us believe that Carol is more accepting and longs for that sense of reconnection. I think she'll explain to Zosia that she thought she could deal with all the loneliness because she believed individuality was better than what the Hive offered. Then I think she'll say that she couldn't cope alone and it all became too much. Essentially what we saw in the 30 Days Later ending in episode 7. But I think this is a case of Carol playing just a much smarter game than she has before. While I do think that she was being incredibly genuine in her reaction towards Zosia at the end of episode 7, especially if we take the firework incident, I also think that deep down she still thinks that what is happening with the Hive Mind Collective is still wrong. And while she is spending this time with Zosia and she does indeed like her, I think that she is still in favour of individuality. I don't think 34 days will completely change her perspective, and that also keeps in line with the description of episode 8, which says that Carol takes a different tack with the others. So I think that she's going to appear as genuine as possible towards Zosia and basically frame it as her own form of charm offensive. But while I think this is what will be going on for the majority of episode 8, as we reach the conclusion of the episode, I think this is where the part of the description that reads that she discovers something more than she anticipated comes true. And I think that discovery is going to be the ultimate charm offensive that the others try on her. That discovery is a theory I didn't believe at first, but I actually think it could be true now, having seen what multiple people have theorized. If you don't know, many people online are speculating that Zosia might actually be pregnant using Carol's mentioned frozen eggs. In episode 7, it was revealed that the others know how to customize the virus to a specific person by working with that individual's stem cells. But they're unable to do this with Carol because she has clearly refused consent, and in response, the Hive Mind promises they won't take anything directly from her body. That said, the show leaves room for interpretation. Earlier mentions in the show of Carol's frozen eggs suggest a possible loophole to this, as since those eggs exist outside her body, accessing the DNA within them could technically honour the other's promise while still sidestepping it. The idea is that the others could track down Carol's frozen eggs wherever they're being stored, since the series never makes it clear that she personally controls the access to them. In a lab, they could either fertilise an egg or create an embryo, or extract the stem cells they need without taking anything from Carol's body. That embryo could then be put into Zosia's uterus, meaning Zosia would carry a child who is genetically Carol's. This approach would let the Hive get the DNA thereafter while technically keeping their promise not to violate Carol's bodily autonomy. If this theory does play out, it puts Carol in a deeply uncomfortable position, as Zosia would be pregnant with her biological child, forcing Carol to weigh her fight for personal autonomy against the others to protect a child that is in every meaningful sense hers. Now, the reason this Zosia theory has blown up is because of some visual cues in the final scene between both Carol and Zosia. Viewers have said that Zosia had a slight baby bump, and at that time I wasn't entirely sure about it. But then I saw that someone who spoke to the costume designer of the show, Jennifer Bryan, had given her quite an interesting answer. She said that she asked the costume designer if Zosia was being dressed as elevated Helen, and she said to definitely remember that for the next couple of episodes. So that might be another big hint that goes alongside what some have said about a potential baby bump. But the other visual hints in episode 7 that people picked out was the Ace Baby play on the Just Married card behind Carol, and then also the Belladonna painting of a beautiful but deadly nightshade seen right when Zosia arrives. Carol's visit to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in episode 7 is a very telling moment as she swaps a print she had for the original Belladonna painting, a striking but poisonous flower rumoured to induce visions of a seductive temptress. Symbolically, the hive mind seems to be sending Zosia as a kind of lure for Carol, while Carol herself looks at this image of something both deadly and irresistible. Interestingly, O'Keeffe painted the Belladonna painting instead of what she was originally commissioned to create, which mirrors Carol's path in episode 7. Given all the freedom and solitude to focus on saving humanity, she instead indulges in leisure, like golfing around the city, rather than focusing on the monumental effort required to stop the hive mind. So on one level, the painting might simply echo that personal detour and a reference for Carol in terms of her being the poisonous flower that appears more beautiful to them. But it could also hint at the charm offensive that the hive may be orchestrating with Zosia, blending allure and danger in a way that mirrors the flower itself. I'm actually going to go with the second option now, in that I think this is the ultimate charm offensive by the hive to turn Carol their way. Maybe we learn in a cold open that Carol and Helen wanted a child, but it never happened. And therefore, when the reveal of Zosia being pregnant comes at the end of episode 8, using Carol's eggs, it would be the most twisted way of trying to bring Carol around. So while deep down she is against the hive and their control of individuality, it's in this moment that Carol could genuinely be shaken by what they've done. Whether that's in a good sense or a bad sense towards the hive is still up for debate. And also with an angry Manousos potentially heading her way by the season finale, that would create such an awkward yet fascinating prospect to play with in both a character and story sense. It's important to remember that this Zosia pregnant theory is just popular speculation based on all the recent hints, so it might not turn out to be the case. But I do think it's a more likely option now, especially given the hints over Carol's eggs, her stem cells, and the visual cues we got in episode 7. So with all this said, what do I think we might see happen in episode 8, and how could this lead into the finale? Well, as I said, I think Manousos rejects the hive's charm offensive and leaves to go meet Carol, thinking that they can start devising a plan against the others. Meanwhile, I think Carol plays a smart game, which is ultimately disrupted when she learns that Zosia is carrying a child. That begins to change her or stir her off course temporarily, and changes the landscape going into her meeting with Manousos come the season finale. And then in the final episode, when she meets Manousos, I think this is where the episode 8 title, La Chica o el Mundo, which means the girl or the world, could come into play. I think what that could be referring to now is whether Carol chooses the life that Zosia presents to her, now with this unborn child, or whether she chooses to continue fighting for the world with Manousos. It makes a lot of sense, and it again stresses the central thematic of the show with individuality versus the collective. The hive using this baby as a charm offensive to bring her around wouldn't confirm whether they are secretly evil in their approaches, as on one side you could see this as their ultimate gift to Carol. Maybe they are giving her this child to try and make her happy. Or on the other side of things, it could be a form of control to push Carol away from her fight for individuality. Ultimately, it creates a very interesting framework to put Carol on the spot in choosing what direction she will go in. But again, if this pregnancy theory isn't the route they go, I still think that the finale will be a choice that Carol has to make. And whether that choice is Manousos and the world or Zosia and the hive is going to be really fascinating. But they were my thoughts and predictions for Pluribus episode 8 and beyond. I can't wait for next week's episode to arrive, and things are definitely getting interesting when it comes to both Carol and Manousos. I think we'll be getting some big answers in the final 2 episodes of the season, and I think both characters will meet come the finale. But what are your predictions and theories surrounding what happens in the final episodes of season 1? Let me know down below in the comments section. For much more videos on Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.